3 years ago, Evelyn Carter walked into work as the trusted financial controller of one of the most powerful families in Blackridge Cove. By lunchtime, she was in handcuffs. Millions were missing. The evidence had her name all over it, and the people she trusted most watched as she was taken away. Evelyn spent 3 years in prison for a crime she didn't commit, but the morning she was released, a mysterious woman was waiting outside with an envelope. Inside was proof that Evelyn had been framed, and the name of the person who did it. Evelyn thought she was coming home for revenge. She had no idea the truth would change who she was. 3 years earlier, Blackridge Cove was the kind of place that looked perfect from a distance. From the winding highway above the cliffs, visitors saw white sailboats drifting across a dark blue harbour, cedar-shingled mansions overlooking the Atlantic, and narrow streets shaded by cypress trees, planted before most of the town's residents were born. The old lighthouse stood at the mouth of the cove, its white paint glowing against the black rocks below. Boutique shops lined the waterfront. Brass signs hung outside private law offices. Expensive cars rolled past bakeries where a loaf of bread cost more than some families earned in an hour. Everything appeared polished, orderly, untouched by ordinary problems. But those who lived there understood the truth. Blackridge Cove wasn't really a town. It was a private club with its own police department. Everyone knew everyone, or at least they knew the family name, the school someone had attended, and whether their grandparents had been important enough to have a building named after them. Children attended the same private academies their parents had attended. Their mothers chaired charity committees together. Their fathers shared drinks in mahogany-panelled rooms where business deals were made without contracts, and political futures were decided before elections ever began. Old money did not merely live in Blackridge Cove. Old money controlled it, and no name carried more weight than Ashcroft. The Ashcroft family had lived above the cove for nearly 150 years. Their estate sat on the highest bluff in town, hidden behind 12-foot iron gates crowned with bronze falcons. A stone wall stretched along the roadside, darkened by salt air and time. Beyond it, a private road curved through rows of ancient cypress trees before reaching a mansion built from pale grey stone. The house had 32 rooms, a ballroom overlooking the ocean, a library with a rolling ladder, and a ceiling painted to resemble the night sky, and a glass conservatory perched so close to the cliffs that waves could sometimes be heard striking the rocks beneath it. The Ashcroft name appeared everywhere. Ashcroft Maritime Holdings, the Ashcroft Foundation, the Edmund Ashcroft Children's Hospital, the Ashcroft School of Business. Their banks financed half the development along the coast. Their shipping companies controlled routes from Boston to Charleston. Their charitable donations built hospital wings, restored theatres, and paid for campaign advertisements that never mentioned the Ashcrofts directly, but always seemed to benefit the people they supported. At the centre of the empire stood Oliver Ashcroft. Oliver was 57, broad-shouldered, silver-haired, and almost unnaturally composed. He wore dark suits that seemed designed to make him appear both powerful and approachable. His smile was practiced but convincing. His voice rarely rose above a calm, measured tone. Newspapers described him as a visionary. Business magazines praised his discipline. Blackridge Cove treated him like royalty. 3 years earlier, 28-year-old Evelyn Carter had worked directly beneath him. Evelyn had not grown up behind iron gates. She had been raised in a small 2-bedroom house near the marina where the smell of engine oil drifted in through the kitchen windows whenever the wind turned inland. Her father, Thomas Carter, repaired fishing boats in a weather-beaten shop beside the harbour. He had thick hands, permanently stained fingernails, and the habit of whistling old songs while he worked. Her mother, Helen, spent 20 years working the night desk at Blackridge General Hospital. She wore comfortable shoes, kept peppermints in her purse, and remembered the names of nearly every nurse, patient, and exhausted family member who passed through the lobby. Evelyn's parents did not have money, but they had made their home feel full. Sunday dinners, handwritten notes inside lunch bags, a small Christmas tree crowded against the living room window. They taught Evelyn that intelligence meant little without integrity, and that being overlooked could be an advantage if she learned to watch carefully. Evelyn had always watched carefully. As a child, she noticed when the grocery bill was higher than usual. She could remember the exact cost of everything on the table. In school, numbers settled into her mind with a clarity people often mistook for ease. Nothing had been easy. She paid her way through college with scholarships, tutoring jobs, and weekend shifts at a seafood restaurant where the floors stayed slick no matter how often they were mopped. She graduated near the top of her class. At 26, she became the youngest financial controller in Ashcroft Maritime's history. She wasn't loud. She didn't dominate meetings. She didn't dress like the executives who spent thousands of dollars on watches they claimed not to care about. Evelyn wore simple dark dresses, tied her brown hair back when she worked, and carried a worn leather notebook filled with tiny, precise handwriting. Her gift was seeing what others missed: a duplicated invoice, a payment routed through the wrong subsidiary, a decimal placed 2 columns away from where it belonged. She could scan a crowded financial statement and feel that something was wrong before she could explain exactly why. Oliver praised her publicly. "She sees through numbers the way musicians hear through noise," he once told a reporter. His daughter, Celeste Ashcroft, invited Evelyn to foundation dinners and private luncheons. His son, Julian, joked that Evelyn was the only person in the company who knew how rich the Ashcrofts actually were. Even Margaret Ashcroft, the elderly family matriarch, seemed to notice her. Margaret was almost 80. She had once been one of the most formidable women in Blackridge Cove, known for remembering every face she met and every insult she received. But in recent years she had become quiet. At public events, she sat beneath carefully arranged silver hair, staring through people with pale blue eyes that seemed lost behind fogged glass. Her hands trembled. She often asked the same question twice. The family claimed dementia had taken hold. Everyone believed them. Evelyn's fiancé, Daniel Price, believed she had finally reached the future she deserved. Daniel was 32, handsome in a restrained, careful way, with neatly trimmed dark hair and a habit of adjusting his cuffs when he was nervous. He worked as an assistant district attorney and had built his reputation on being methodical, principled, and almost impossible to rattle. He and Evelyn had met at a fundraiser neither of them wanted to attend. She had made a dry comment about the silent auction. He had laughed too loudly. By the end of the night, they were talking alone near the coat check while everyone important moved around them without noticing. Daniel proposed beside the harbour beneath strings of white lights. The ring was not enormous by Blackridge Cove standards, but Evelyn had cried before he finished asking. They planned an October wedding. Helen had already begun collecting magazine clippings. Thomas had quietly started restoring an old wooden boat he intended to give them as a wedding gift. Then, on a rainy Monday morning in March, $18 million disappeared. At 8:12 a.m., Evelyn entered Ashcroft Tower, carrying a paper cup of coffee and a folded umbrella dripping onto the marble floor. The lobby smelled faintly of polished stone and roasted coffee from the cafe near the elevators. At 8:19, 3 police vehicles stopped outside. At 8:23, officers entered the 22nd floor. At 8:26, 2 detectives approached Evelyn's desk. She looked up from a spreadsheet and saw the entire office watching. At first, she assumed something had happened elsewhere in the building. Then one of the officers took her wrist. Evelyn laughed. Not because anything was funny, because the alternative was panic. "There's been a mistake," she said. No one answered. Detective Marcus Hale stood near the elevator holding a thick folder against his chest. Hale had spent 17 years investigating financial crimes in Blackridge Cove. He was in his early 50s, with close-cropped grey hair, a lined face, and the controlled stillness of someone who preferred listening to speaking. He wore a grey wool coat that smelled faintly of rain. His eyes met Evelyn's without warmth. "Evelyn Carter," he said, "you are under arrest for grand larceny, fraud, money laundering, and criminal conspiracy." The office became so quiet Evelyn could hear the ventilation system humming overhead. She looked toward Oliver's glass conference room. Oliver stood behind the wall with Celeste beside him. He looked devastated. Celeste covered her mouth with both hands. Julian was nowhere to be seen. "Mr. Ashcroft," Evelyn said. Oliver's face tightened. He did not move. Daniel arrived 20 minutes later. Evelyn saw him force his way through reporters gathering near the elevators. Relief hit her so hard her knees almost weakened. Daniel was a prosecutor. Daniel understood evidence. Daniel knew her. For one hopeful second, she believed he would look at the detectives, demand an explanation, and dismantle the mistake in minutes. Then Hale opened the folder. Daniel read the first page. The colour drained from his face. "Daniel," Evelyn whispered. He looked at her as if she had suddenly become a stranger. The evidence was overwhelming. Her fingerprints were found on transfer authorizations she had never seen. A series of offshore payments had been approved, using her private authentication code. Security footage showed a woman with Evelyn's height, Evelyn's hair, and Evelyn's coat entering a restricted financial vault after midnight. The missing funds had been routed through 12 shell companies before landing in accounts connected to Evelyn's name. Her work computer contained encrypted messages discussing escape routes. Her apartment contained a flash drive hidden behind a loose section of molding. Her passport had been renewed 2 weeks earlier. Investigators also discovered that a large payment had been made toward Evelyn and Daniel's wedding venue from an account connected to the missing funds. Evelyn denied everything. She denied it until her throat burned. She denied it during interrogation. She denied it in court. She denied it while newspapers printed photographs of her entering the courthouse beneath headlines that made guilt sound like fact. Then Daniel was called to testify. He sat beneath the bright courtroom lights, pale and rigid. He told the jury Evelyn had become secretive. He admitted she had asked hypothetical questions about countries without extradition treaties. Evelyn remembered the conversation. They had been watching a crime documentary. She had laughed while asking which country he would flee to if he ever became a fugitive. He had chosen Switzerland. She had chosen New Zealand because she liked the scenery. Now the joke sounded sinister in court. Daniel produced a handwritten note discovered in their kitchen. It read, "Once the transfer is complete, nothing can stop us." Daniel said he recognized Evelyn's handwriting. She stood so quickly her attorney grabbed her arm. "It's forged," she cried. "Daniel, look at me. It's forged." He looked at her. For 1 second, pain moved across his face. Then he looked away. The jury convicted her. Blackridge Cove loved scandal, but it loved conclusions even more. People who had praised Evelyn's intelligence now described it as cunning. Co-workers who had eaten lunch beside her told reporters she had always seemed ambitious. A woman who had once invited Evelyn to a baby shower claimed she had never trusted her. The newspapers called her the $18 million bride. Oliver Ashcroft appeared outside the courthouse beneath a row of black umbrellas. His voice broke at exactly the right moment. "Our family trusted Miss Carter," he told the cameras. "Today, justice has finally been served." Evelyn was sentenced to 12 years. She remembered only fragments of the day they took her away. Her mother crying into her father's shoulder. Thomas looking suddenly old. Her younger sister, Sophie, staring at the floor. Daniel sitting alone in the front row with both hands clasped between his knees. Detective Hale closing his folder. Oliver placing a comforting hand on Daniel's back. But there was one thing Evelyn never saw. Across the street, beneath a black umbrella, Margaret Ashcroft stood beside a waiting sedan. The elderly woman watched as Evelyn was loaded into the prison van. For one brief moment, the confusion disappeared from Margaret's face. Her trembling stopped. Her pale eyes sharpened. "They picked the wrong girl," she whispered. Then she entered the car and disappeared. 3 years passed. Prison reduced life to routines. Metal doors, count times, plastic trays, shoes squeaking against polished floors. Evelyn learned not to think too far ahead. She measured time by letters. Her mother wrote every week at first. Thomas added notes in the margins, usually about boats he had repaired or weather near the harbour. Sophie wrote once, then never again. Evelyn's father died during her 2nd year inside, a heart attack in the repair shop. She received the news from a prison counsellor whose voice was too gentle. Her mother followed 11 months later after a short illness Evelyn believed had begun with grief. Helen's final letter arrived after the funeral. It contained only 4 lines. "I love you. I'm sorry. There are things I should have told you. None of this was your fault." Evelyn read the letter until the paper softened at the folds. Sophie changed her last name and moved away. Daniel never wrote at all. Evelyn was released early after an overcrowding review and credit for good behaviour. On the morning she walked free, the sky was colourless. A thin mist clung to the parking lot beyond the prison gate. Evelyn wore jeans that no longer fit properly, a grey sweater issued by a volunteer organisation, and the only coat she owned. One duffel bag hung from her shoulder, everything she had left fit inside it. The gate closed behind her with a heavy metallic sound. No family waited, no reporters, no friends. The world seemed to have moved on without her. Then a black SUV pulled to the curb. Its polished body reflected the prison fence. A sharply dressed woman stepped out. She appeared to be in her late 50s, with silver-streaked dark hair cut just above her shoulders. A tailored charcoal coat, framed a narrow, controlled figure. A pale scar ran from beneath her left ear toward the collar of her blouse. She did not smile. "Evelyn Carter?" Evelyn tightened her grip on the duffel bag. "Who's asking?" The woman handed her a sealed envelope. The paper was thick and cream-coloured. Inside was a single sheet. One sentence had been typed across the centre. "I know who stole the money." Evelyn read it twice, then a third time. When she looked up, the woman had opened the rear passenger door. "If you want revenge," she said, "get in." The woman's name was Vivian Sinclair, and from this moment forward, she is suspect number 1. Vivian claimed she wanted to help Evelyn, but she had been waiting outside the prison before Evelyn's release had been made public. She knew details about the case that had never appeared in newspapers, and she seemed far too prepared for a woman acting out of kindness. "Would you get into Vivian Sinclair's car?" Comment 1 now if you already believe Vivian is hiding something. Evelyn looked inside the SUV. The leather seats were immaculate. A second woman sat behind the wheel, staring forward. The windows were tinted. The engine remained running. "What do you want from me?" Evelyn asked. Vivian's expression remained unreadable. "The same thing you do." "What's that?" "To watch the Ashcrofts lose everything." Evelyn should have walked away. Instead, she climbed inside. Vivian Sinclair's home stood 40 miles south of Blackridge Cove in a pine forest above the coastline. The road narrowed as they climbed. Fog threaded between the trees. The ocean appeared occasionally through the branches, dark and restless beneath the late morning sky. Vivian's house did not resemble the Ashcroft mansion. It was modern and severe, built from glass, concrete, and blackened wood. At first glance, it looked elegant. At second glance, Evelyn noticed the cameras. One above the gate, 2 beneath the roofline, another disguised inside a stone planter. Steel shutters were concealed within the window frames. Motion sensors followed the driveway. The home was not a residence. It was a fortress pretending to be one. Vivian led Evelyn into a study that occupied the entire northern side of the house. The room smelled of leather, paper, and coffee that had been left too long on a warming plate. Filing cabinets lined 2 walls. Maps were pinned across another. Photographs, financial statements, newspaper clippings, and handwritten notes covered a wide corkboard beneath white directional lights. One wall was devoted entirely to the Ashcroft family. Oliver's photograph stood at the centre. Red lines connected him to senators, police officials, judges, contractors, shell companies, banks, and charities. Beside him was Celeste Ashcroft. Celeste was 35, elegant and camera-ready, with blonde hair cut to her chin and the poised posture of someone raised to believe she would always be observed. She directed the Ashcroft Foundation and had built a public image around children's hospitals, educational grants, and domestic violence charities. Celeste became suspect number 2. Below her was Julian Ashcroft. Julian was 31 and looked like a younger, less disciplined version of his father. He had Oliver's broad shoulders and blue eyes, but none of his control. Photographs showed him leaving nightclubs, boarding private jets, and arguing with photographers. He had vanished from Blackridge Cove during Evelyn's trial. 6 months later, he returned without explanation. Julian became suspect number 3. Another photograph showed Daniel leaving the courthouse after Evelyn's conviction. Daniel became suspect number 4. A final photograph showed Detective Marcus Hale entering a private restaurant beside Oliver. Hale became suspect number 5. Vivian watched Evelyn study the wall. "You've been collecting this for years," Evelyn said. "Longer." "Why?" Vivian poured 2 glasses of water from a crystal carafe. "Because the Ashcrofts destroyed my company, my marriage, and nearly my life." 20 years earlier, Vivian and Oliver had founded a logistics firm together. Vivian designed the shipping network. Oliver found investors. When the company began earning serious money, Oliver accused Vivian of falsifying contracts and diverting company funds. She lost her shares. She lost the lawsuit. Her husband believed the newspapers and left before the trial ended. "My name became a warning," Vivian said. "People used it in boardrooms when they wanted to describe a woman who had reached too far." Her voice remained calm, but one hand tightened around the glass. Evelyn recognized rehearsed pain. She had practiced it herself every night in prison. "Why wait 3 years to find me?" "I didn't wait." Vivian placed a thick folder on the desk. Inside were photographs of jurors, court employees, bank officers, police technicians, and Ashcroft executives. I've been working since the day you were arrested. Evelyn opened the folder. Every piece of evidence used against her appeared in duplicate. The transfer authorizations, the vault footage, the handwritten note, the flash drive, the bank records. Beside each exhibit was an analysis. Her signatures had been forged. The security footage had been digitally altered. The offshore accounts were created using identity documents taken from her employment file. The flash drive was inserted into her laptop after police seized it. The handwritten note was written on paper from Evelyn's office stationery, but the ink had been manufactured 6 months after the date prosecutors claimed the note was written. Evelyn's fingers trembled against the page. You can prove this. I can prove the evidence was manufactured, Vivian said. I cannot yet prove who ordered it. Then take this to the police. Vivian almost smiled. Which police? Evelyn looked toward Hale's photograph. Vivian followed her eyes. The Ashcrofts do not own every person in Blackridge Cove. They only need to own the right ones. Evelyn turned another page. A sealed section was labelled Daniel Price. She stopped. Vivian's voice softened. Your fiancé wasn't lying. Evelyn looked up. He thought the evidence was real. No. Detective Hale showed him financial records, private messages, and travel searches. Daniel believed you planned to flee without him. No. He believed you used him. Evelyn closed the folder. He knew me. He knew the version of you he believed in. That should have been enough. It wasn't. Evelyn walked toward the windows. The forest outside moved in the wind, dark branches pressing against the fog. For 3 years she had imagined Daniel knowingly betraying her. She pictured him meeting with Oliver, accepting money, planning his testimony. It had been easier to hate a man who chose to destroy her. It was harder to understand a man who had simply doubted her. Vivian stepped closer. Daniel may have believed the evidence, she said, but that does not make him innocent. Evelyn turned. What aren't you telling me? Vivian removed a photograph from the folder. Daniel stood outside the Ashcroft estate 2 weeks after Evelyn's conviction. Celeste was beside him. They appeared to be arguing. On the back was a handwritten date. Daniel has met privately with Celeste for 3 years, Vivian said. Evelyn stared at the photograph. Are they together? I don't know. You know everything else. No, I know what someone inside the Ashcroft estate chooses to send me. You have an informant? Yes. Who? They refuse to reveal themselves. And you trust them? I trust information I can verify. Evelyn looked back at the wall of suspects. Vivian had given her clean clothing, food, a private bedroom, evidence proving she had been framed. Yet something about the room felt arranged for her arrival. Something about Vivian's answers felt measured. What do you need from me? Evelyn asked. Vivian opened a second folder. Inside was a driver's license bearing Evelyn's photograph and another name. Nora Vale. The woman in the picture had darker hair, glasses, softer makeup, and a faint scar near one eyebrow. You're the only person who understands Ashcroft Maritime's financial systems well enough to locate the original transactions, Vivian said. They'll recognise me. No, they won't. Oliver sat across from me every week. Oliver sat across from your reports. He rarely looked at you. Celeste knew me. Celeste knew your clothing, your hairstyle, and the woman who apologised before entering a room. Vivian leaned closer. The Ashcrofts never truly saw you, Evelyn. That is why this can work. You want me to go back. I want Nora Vale to accept a temporary auditing position at Ashcroft Maritime. This is insane. It is the only way to discover what the $18 million was really used for. Evelyn faced Oliver's photograph. For 3 years she had imagined seeing him again. In some fantasies she screamed. In others, she destroyed him with a single piece of evidence. In none of them did she walk back into his office pretending to be someone else. When do I start? She asked. Monday. Nora Vale entered Ashcroft Tower beneath a bright autumn sky. The lobby had changed. The cafe was gone. A sculpted brass wall now stood behind the security desk. Evelyn's reflection appeared distorted across its surface. Her hair had been dyed dark brown and cut shorter. Glasses changed the shape of her face. A makeup artist had softened the sharpness around her cheeks and created a faint scar near her eyebrow. Vivian had trained her to carry her shoulders differently, to walk more slowly, to speak with the trace of a Midwestern accent. Still, Evelyn felt exposed. Her heart slammed against her ribs as the elevator carried her to the 22nd floor. The doors opened. The carpet had been replaced. Her old office was now a conference room. A young receptionist greeted her without recognition. Then Celeste approached. Celeste wore a cream-coloured suit and pearl earrings. She moved with the same calm confidence Evelyn remembered. For one terrifying moment, her expression changed. Not dramatically. Just a slight tightening around the eyes. "Nora Vale?" Celeste asked. "Yes." Celeste extended one hand. "Welcome to Ashcroft Maritime." Evelyn shook it. Celeste's fingers were cool. She did not recognize her. Neither did Julian when he arrived late that afternoon wearing dark sunglasses. He smelled faintly of expensive cologne and old whiskey. He glanced at Evelyn once and continued walking. The Ashcrofts truly had never looked at the people beneath them. But someone else did. At 6:40 that evening, Evelyn returned to her temporary desk and found a folded piece of paper beneath the keyboard. It contained only 5 words. "You should not have returned." Evelyn's pulse quickened. She looked across the office. Most employees had left. The windows reflected rows of empty desks and the city lights beginning to appear below. At the far end of the floor, Celeste stood inside Oliver's office. She was watching Evelyn through the glass. When their eyes met, Celeste slowly closed the blinds. "Remember, Celeste is suspect number 2. Comment 2 now if you believe Celeste recognized Evelyn and is only pretending she didn't." Evelyn slipped the note into her bag. As she entered the elevator, she looked down into the lobby. Detective Hale crossed the marble floor. He was not wearing a uniform. Oliver waited beside a private elevator. They shook hands like old business partners. Then the doors closed behind them. Evelyn spent 2 weeks studying the Ashcroft Empire from the inside. As Nora Vale, she was quiet, efficient, and forgettable. She corrected accounting errors without embarrassing anyone. She ate lunch alone near a window overlooking the harbour. She asked enough questions to appear competent, but never enough to appear dangerous. At night, she copied fragments of financial records onto an encrypted drive Vivian had given her. The missing $18 million had not moved like stolen money. Stolen money was usually divided, converted, hidden, and pushed beyond reach. This money had been distributed with purpose. Some of it went to political consultants. Some went to private security firms. Some went to legal foundations and medical organizations. Then the trail vanished. One transaction led to Northlight Security. Another reached a private clinic in Virginia. A third passed through a foundation controlled by Celeste. Every path pointed toward a different Ashcroft. Celeste began appearing beside Evelyn's desk. Sometimes she asked about reports. Sometimes she simply stood there, watching Evelyn type. One afternoon, rain struck the windows while the office lights flickered against the darkening sky. "You remind me of someone," Celeste said. Evelyn kept her eyes on the spreadsheet. "I hope she was pleasant." "She was smarter than everyone around her." "That sounds exhausting." Celeste's smile disappeared. She thought so too. Before Evelyn could answer, Julian entered the office and dropped a folder onto Celeste's desk. "You moved the payment again." Celeste closed the door. Their voices carried faintly through the glass. "You were told not to touch that account," Celeste said. "It's my money." "It was never your money." "Our father promised me." "Our father lies." Julian noticed Evelyn watching. He opened the door. "Problem, Nora?" "No." "Then stop listening." Later that afternoon, Evelyn found Julian's folder abandoned beside the copier. Inside was the payment schedule linked to Northlight Security. Julian had received monthly transfers beginning 1 week after Evelyn's arrest. The payments totaled nearly $2 million. When Vivian saw the documents, she blamed him immediately. "Julian had gambling debts," Vivian said. "You discovered the transfers, and he framed you before you could expose him." "It's too simple." "Simple doesn't mean wrong. You want it to be Julian." "I want whoever did this." Evelyn studied her. "You said your source works inside the estate." "Yes." "These payments were marked confidential. How did you not know?" "My source does not have access to every account." "Or your source is Julian." Vivian's expression hardened. You think I'm protecting him? I think you're protecting someone. Vivian stood. For the first time, anger broke through her control. Do not confuse secrecy with betrayal. They felt exactly the same in prison. That night, Evelyn returned to the apartment Vivian had arranged for her in Blackridge Cove. The building stood 3 blocks from the harbour above a closed antiques store. Wind pushed fog through the street. From the sidewalk, Evelyn saw light beneath her apartment door. She knew she had turned it off. She stepped backward. Called Vivian. No answer. Called again. Nothing. Then she heard movement inside. Evelyn entered through the rear stairwell and climbed to the roof. A maintenance ladder led to the balcony below. She crossed carefully, gripping cold metal as the wind pushed against her coat. Through the glass, she saw a man standing in her living room. Daniel. He looked older. His hair was shorter. Lines had settled around his mouth. He held the anonymous warning note in one hand. Evelyn opened the balcony door. Daniel spun around. For several seconds, neither spoke. Then he whispered her name. Evelyn? She reached inside her coat for pepper spray. How did you find me? Daniel looked at her altered face. I didn't. I followed Nora Vale. Why? Because Nora Vale doesn't exist. Evelyn kept her distance. Daniel set the note on the table. I saw you leave Ashcroft Tower. Something about the way you walked. He shook his head. I thought I was losing my mind. You broke into my apartment. The door was unlocked. It wasn't. Daniel looked toward the hallway. Then someone was here before me. Evelyn followed his gaze. Her bedroom closet stood open. The mattress had been cut. Drawers had been emptied. Someone had searched everything. Daniel moved toward her. She raised the spray. Don't. He stopped. I know what I did, he said. You testified against me. You believed paper over me. I believed what I saw. That is what people say when they want forgiveness without responsibility. Daniel swallowed. I don't expect forgiveness. Then why are you here? To tell you Celeste is trying to reopen your case. Evelyn stared at him. Daniel explained that Celeste contacted him after the trial. She believed evidence had been manipulated. For 3 years, she quietly compared sealed records and court timelines. She thinks her father framed you, Daniel said. Why tell you? Because she doesn't trust the police. Do you? Daniel looked away. That was an answer. He removed a small brass key from his pocket. This opens a storage unit near the old train station. Celeste gave it to me yesterday. She said it contains documents Oliver ordered destroyed. Why didn't she retrieve them? She says someone watches her. Or she wants me found with stolen evidence. Daniel nodded. That's possible. Evelyn almost laughed. At least he had learned to doubt. Why should I trust you? You shouldn't. He placed the key on the table. But someone accessed the sealed evidence from your trial last month. Who? Detective Hale. Daniel is suspect number 4. He betrayed Evelyn once, broke into her apartment, and maintained a secret relationship with Celeste for 3 years. Comment 4 if you think Daniel is lying again. Evelyn waited until Daniel left before calling Vivian. This time, she answered immediately. Where have you been? Evelyn demanded. Driving. Daniel found me. Silence. Then Vivian said, Leave the apartment. You knew he was following me. No. Someone searched the place. Take nothing. Leave now. Evelyn heard something in Vivian's voice she had not heard before. Fear. As Evelyn reached the stairwell, her phone vibrated. A photograph appeared from an unknown number. It showed her standing inside the apartment with Daniel. The picture had been taken through the balcony window less than 5 minutes earlier. Beneath it was a message. Stop digging. The next funeral will be yours. Evelyn ran downstairs. Across the street, a dark sedan pulled away from the curb. She saw only the driver's silhouette, but on the passenger seat, illuminated briefly beneath a street lamp, rested a grey police coat. The same kind worn by Detective Marcus Hale. Suspect number 5. The storage unit near the old train station appeared empty. Evelyn arrived before sunrise with Vivian and Daniel. Neither trusted the other. Vivian accused Daniel of leading them into a trap. Daniel accused Vivian of using Evelyn as bait. Evelyn ignored them. The unit smelled of dust, rust, and damp concrete. A metal chair sat in one corner. An old filing cabinet leaned against the wall. Dust covered the floor deeply enough to preserve footprints. Someone had been there recently. Evelyn knelt near the back wall. A clean rectangular patch marked where a box had rested. "It's gone," Daniel said. "No," Evelyn replied. "It was moved." She followed the prints. They ended at the wall. Evelyn pressed against the panel. It shifted. Behind it was a narrow compartment containing a black accounting ledger. No names appeared on the cover. Inside were handwritten dates, payments, and initials. Some belonged to judges, council members, police officials. One belonged to Detective Marcus Hale. The payments beside Hale's initials began 11 years earlier. "He's been taking money from Oliver," Daniel said. "Or someone wants us to think he has," Evelyn replied. Vivian took the ledger. "We bring this to federal investigators." "Not yet." Vivian's eyes narrowed. "This is what we've been waiting for." "It's too perfect. A secret compartment. A handwritten bribery book. Celeste gives Daniel the key, and somehow no one reaches it before us?" Daniel looked at her. "You think Celeste planted it?" "I think every person in this case keeps handing me exactly the evidence they want me to see." Vivian closed the book. "We don't have time for paranoia." "That's what you said about Julian." Daniel looked between them. "What about Julian?" Evelyn told him about the Northlight payments. His expression changed. "Northlight isn't a security company." Vivian became still. "What is it?" "A private medical transport service," Daniel said. "I encountered it during a sealed prosecution. They move protected witnesses, informants, patients from private psychiatric facilities, anyone whose identity has to disappear." Evelyn looked at the ledger. Why would Julian receive payments from them? Before Daniel could answer, the storage door slammed shut. A metal lock clicked outside. Liquid began seeping beneath the door. The smell struck them immediately. Gasoline. Vivian rushed toward the entrance. Daniel searched the rear wall. Evelyn heard the scratch of a match. Flame raced beneath the door. Heat rolled across the concrete floor. Smoke filled the unit. Daniel lifted the metal chair and drove it into the false wall. Wood splintered. A narrow maintenance corridor appeared beyond it. They crawled through as fire climbed the walls. The unit erupted seconds after they escaped. Outside, Evelyn saw a hooded figure running between abandoned warehouses. She followed. The figure entered a waiting car. The driver turned toward her. Julian Ashcroft. He looked directly at Evelyn before speeding away. "Julian is suspect number 3. He received millions in secret payments, appeared at the scene of an attempted murder, and fled without offering help. Comment 3 if Julian has become your prime suspect." Later that morning, Julian contacted Evelyn. His message contained an address. "Come alone if you want to know why Northlight paid me." Vivian ordered her not to go. Daniel agreed. Evelyn went anyway. The address led to an abandoned boathouse outside Blackridge Cove. The building leaned over grey water at the end of a rotting pier. Salt had stripped paint from the walls. Broken nets hung from hooks inside. Wind pushed through gaps in the boards, carrying the smell of seaweed and diesel. Julian waited near the water with a pistol in his hand. He looked exhausted. His jaw was unshaven. One sleeve of his expensive coat was torn. Evelyn stopped 10 feet away. "Did you set the fire?" "No." "You drove the person who did." "I drove my sister." Evelyn's breath caught. "Celeste?" "She said the ledger had to be destroyed." "Why?" "Because it isn't a bribery ledger." Julian placed the pistol on the floor and pushed it toward Evelyn with his shoe. Then he raised his hands. "The initials are people my father paid to remain silent about my grandfather's death." Evelyn remembered the official story. Edmund Ashcroft had fallen from the cliffs 11 years earlier after drinking alone in the conservatory. His death was ruled an accident. "My father killed him," Julian said. "Did you see it?" "My grandmother did." "Margaret?" Julian nodded. "She found him below the cliffs. He was still alive. He told her Oliver pushed him." "Why didn't she go to the police?" "She did. Detective Hale arrived first." The payments began the following week. Why would Celeste destroy proof? Evelyn asked. Because she thinks exposing our father destroys everyone connected to him. And the $18 million? Julian's expression tightened. It funded Northlight. For what? To move people. What people? Anyone who knew too much. Before he could say more, the boathouse lights went out. A gunshot cracked through the darkness. Julian collapsed. Evelyn dropped behind a workbench. A second bullet struck the wall above her. Wood splintered across her hair. She crawled toward Julian and pressed both hands against the blood spreading through his shirt. A shadow moved near the entrance. Evelyn grabbed Julian's pistol. She fired into the ceiling. The figure fled. Outside, an engine started. Evelyn reached the road in time to see a woman behind the wheel. Silver-streaked hair. Vivian Sinclair. By the time Evelyn reached the pavement, the car was gone. Vivian denied being there. You followed me, Evelyn said. I told you not to go. I saw you. You saw a car in the dark. I saw your face. Vivian's voice turned cold. Then ask yourself why the shooter left after you fired and why you are still alive. Evelyn looked down at Julian. His eyes fluttered. Blood soaked her hands. Who is your source inside the Ashcroft estate? Vivian did not answer. Is it Margaret? Silence. Evelyn ended the call. Julian survived surgery. Detective Hale arrived at the hospital before anyone claimed to have contacted police. He found Evelyn in a dim hallway outside the operating room. You need to come with me, he said. No. This isn't a request. Then arrest me. Hale glanced toward the security camera above them. You have no idea what you are standing in the middle of. Explain it. I tried to protect you 3 years ago. Evelyn stared at him. You arrested me. I arrested you before Oliver could have you killed. The evidence was already built, Hale continued. The district attorney had been pressured. The judge had been selected. Your conviction was guaranteed. You took Ashcroft money? Yes. His answer surprised her. I took it because Margaret asked me to. Why would Margaret want you paid? To make Oliver believe I belonged to him. Hale leaned closer. Vivian Sinclair is not trying to clear your name. She is trying to finish something that began before you were born. What? Hale looked toward Julian's hospital room. Ask Vivian who your mother was before she married your father. Then he walked away. That evening, Evelyn searched through old public records. Helen Carter had worked one summer at the Ashcroft estate when she was 19. 9 months later, Evelyn was born. No father appeared on the original birth certificate. Thomas Carter's name was added 2 years later. Tucked inside an archived record was an old photograph. Young Helen stood outside a small white cottage beside Vivian Sinclair. Between them was a baby. Evelyn. On the back, someone had written, She can never know where she came from. Vivian did not deny the photograph. Rain struck the study windows while Evelyn stood before her. Your mother and I were friends, Vivian said. That isn't what I asked. No. Who was my biological father? Vivian looked toward Oliver's photograph. Evelyn followed her gaze. Her stomach turned. No. Oliver forced himself on your mother during the summer she worked at the estate. The room seemed to tilt. You're lying. I wish I were. Why would she remain silent? Edmund Ashcroft paid her to leave Blackridge Cove. Thomas knew everything and loved you as his own. Evelyn's throat tightened. Did Oliver know? Yes. Then why hire me? He didn't recognize you at first. At first? Vivian opened a drawer and removed a letter written by Helen. In it, Evelyn's mother described visiting Margaret after Evelyn accepted the controller position. Helen begged Margaret to ensure Oliver never discovered who Evelyn was. But Oliver found the letter. 3 weeks later, the suspicious transactions began. You discovered irregular activity, Vivian said. Oliver realized you were capable of exposing him. You were also living proof of what he did to your mother. So he framed me. Yes. And you knew before I entered your car. Vivian's silence answered. You used me. I prepared you. You turned my life into one of your files. I gave you a chance to survive. You could have told me. You would not have believed me. You don't get to decide which truths I can survive. Vivian's eyes filled, but she refused to look away. I made that mistake once before. Were you at the boathouse? Yes. Did you shoot Julian? No. Who did? I don't know. You expect me to believe you? No, Vivian said. I expect you to question everyone, including me. Vivian finally revealed the identity of her source, Margaret Ashcroft. For 3 years, Margaret had secretly passed documents, recordings, and account numbers to Vivian. Her dementia was an act. After Edmund's death, Oliver seized control of Margaret's finances and surrounded her with employees loyal to him. Appearing confused was the only way to survive inside her own home. The note beneath your keyboard came from Margaret, Vivian said. The warning? The first warning, not the death threat. Why didn't she tell me the truth? Because Oliver monitors everyone who speaks with her. Evelyn looked at the suspect wall. Celeste, Julian, Daniel, Hale, Vivian, every one of them had lied. Everyone claimed protection as an excuse. Where is Margaret now? Vivian hesitated. The Ashcroft estate. Evelyn went alone. The iron gates opened before she touched the intercom. Someone expected her. The mansion felt hollow. Portraits watched from dark walls. Tall clocks measured time in quiet mechanical beats. The ocean moved beyond the windows like black glass. Margaret sat inside the conservatory overlooking the cliffs. She wore a pale blue robe. A porcelain cup trembled between both hands. Mrs. Ashcroft. Margaret stared toward the water. Vivian told me. Margaret's hands stopped shaking. She set down the cup. When she looked at Evelyn, there was no confusion in her eyes. You have your mother's courage, she said. Evelyn felt something break inside her. You watched them take me away? Yes. You knew I was innocent? Yes. Why didn't you stop it? Margaret looked toward the cliffs where Edmund had died. Because I had fragments of truth, not proof. Oliver controlled judges, police officers, and members of my own family. Had I spoken too soon, you would not have gone to prison. What would have happened? You would have died. Evelyn thought of the fire, the boathouse, the photograph through her window. Who is trying to kill me now? Margaret looked toward the doorway. Someone who knows Oliver is about to fall. Celeste entered. She held a gun. Her cream coat was soaked from rain. Mascara had streaked beneath her eyes. Grandmother, she said, move away from her. Margaret remained seated. Celeste aimed at Evelyn. You should have disappeared after prison. Did you shoot Julian? I was trying to stop him from talking. He's your brother. He was going to destroy everything. You planted the ledger. Celeste nodded. I needed you to believe Hale was responsible. I thought Vivian would deliver it to federal investigators, Oliver would be arrested, and the rest of us could survive. But Julian told me the truth. Julian has never understood consequences. And the fire? Celeste's hand trembled. I only wanted to destroy the ledger. You locked us inside. I didn't know Daniel was there. So Vivian and I were acceptable. Tears filled Celeste's eyes. You don't understand what my father does to people who disobey him. Margaret stood. I understand. Celeste looked at her. You protected him for 11 years. I collected proof. You let us live beside him. I was trying to keep you alive. Celeste laughed bitterly. Everyone in this family calls cowardice protection. A slow clap sounded from the doorway. Oliver entered. Detective Hale followed him. Oliver looked at Celeste's gun, then Evelyn. What a disappointing reunion. Oliver nodded toward Hale. Take the weapon. Hale approached Celeste. For one moment, Evelyn thought he would obey. Then Hale turned and aimed his gun at Oliver. It's over, he said. Oliver smiled. You've said that before. Daniel appeared at the opposite entrance holding his phone. This conversation is being recorded, he said. Celeste swung the gun toward him. A shot exploded. Daniel fell. Evelyn screamed. Hale fired at Celeste's hand. Her gun struck the floor. Oliver lunged for it. Margaret stepped between him and the weapon. Oliver stopped inches from his mother. For one breathless moment, everyone froze. "Tell them what you did to your father," Margaret said. Oliver's expression changed, not fear, relief, as though pretending had finally exhausted him. "He was weak," Oliver said. "He planned to remove me from the company." "So you pushed him?" "I corrected his mistake." "And Evelyn?" Oliver looked at Evelyn carefully. For the first time, her biological father truly saw her. "Your mother should have taken the money and stayed gone." Daniel, bleeding from the side, raised his phone. Oliver noticed. His face twisted. He grabbed Celeste's fallen weapon. Before he could fire, a gunshot shattered the glass behind him. Oliver dropped. Vivian stood at the conservatory entrance holding a pistol. Smoke curled from its barrel. Oliver looked down at the blood spreading across his shoulder. Sirens rose beyond the gates. Federal agents flooded the estate. Daniel's recording had already been transmitted. So had Margaret's documents. News helicopters circled above Blackridge Cove. Vehicles crowded the road beyond the iron gates. Oliver Ashcroft was carried from his mansion in handcuffs. Celeste was arrested for attempted murder, arson, evidence tampering, and conspiracy. Hale surrendered himself for accepting illegal payments, even though he claimed they had been part of Margaret's plan. Vivian surrendered her weapon without resistance. Julian agreed to testify. Daniel was taken into surgery. Margaret stood beneath the broken conservatory glass while rain blew through the shattered wall. At this point, tell us who you suspected most. Comment 1 for Vivian, comment 2 for Celeste, comment 3 for Julian, comment 4 for Daniel, or comment 5 for Detective Hale. But the file was not finished. Celeste had tried to silence Evelyn. Oliver had framed her. Hale helped manipulate the investigation. Vivian concealed the truth of Evelyn's birth. Daniel abandoned her when she needed him most. Yet none of them created the forged security footage. None opened the offshore accounts. None placed the flash drive inside Evelyn's apartment. That person remained unknown. The investigation lasted 5 months. Oliver was charged with murder, conspiracy, obstruction of justice, financial fraud, witness intimidation, bribery, and dozens of related crimes. The $18 million had never been stolen. It funded a hidden network used to move witnesses, purchase silence, manipulate elections, and conceal evidence connected to Edmund Ashcroft's murder. Celeste accepted a plea agreement. She admitted planting the false ledger, setting the storage unit fire, shooting Julian, and sending the death threat. But she insisted she had not framed Evelyn 3 years earlier. Julian confirmed portions of her story. Hale provided recordings showing Oliver directing police investigations. Margaret testified publicly, speaking with such clarity that half of Blackridge Cove believed they were watching someone return from the dead. Vivian's evidence exposed 12 shell companies and 6 public officials. Evelyn's conviction was vacated. Her name was cleared. The state offered a settlement. Ashcroft Maritime entered bankruptcy. The mansion was seized. The iron gates remained closed. But justice did not feel like the moment Oliver was convicted. It did not feel like seeing Evelyn's photograph beneath the headline, "Wrongly convicted, woman exonerated after Ashcroft conspiracy exposed." It did not feel like the district attorney apologizing before television cameras. Justice came quietly. It came on a cold morning at the cemetery. Evelyn carried 2 bouquets along a narrow path between rows of weathered stones. Her parents rested beneath a maple tree. Thomas's headstone included a small carved fishing boat. Helen's contained the words, "She loved without conditions." Evelyn placed the flowers between them. For a while, she said nothing. "I'm sorry it took so long," she whispered. Wind moved through the branches. "I kept thinking clearing my name would fix everything." She touched her mother's stone. "But you're still gone." Her voice broke. "I wish you had told me. About Oliver, about everything." She turned toward Thomas's grave. "And I hope you knew none of it changed who my real father was." Evelyn closed her eyes. "We did it!" Footsteps sounded behind her. Daniel stood at the edge of the path. He walked with a slight limp from the shooting. For a moment, Evelyn considered leaving. Instead, she waited. "I didn't want to interrupt," he said. "You already did." He accepted that. "I came to say goodbye." "Where are you going?" "Boston. I resigned from the district attorney's office. You don't have to resign because of me." "I'm not." He placed an envelope beside the flowers. It's a statement accepting responsibility for my testimony. I sent copies to the bar and the wrongful conviction board. You believed the evidence. I wanted to believe it. Evelyn looked at him. Daniel's eyes filled. If you were guilty, then I was a man who had been fooled. If you were innocent, then I was a man who abandoned the person he loved. One version was easier to live with. For the first time, he sounded completely honest. I am sorry, he said. I know. Can you forgive me? Evelyn thought of the courtroom, the prison gate, the years she replayed his testimony. I forgave you. Hope appeared in his face. But forgiveness doesn't erase consequences. The hope faded. I don't want to carry hatred for you anymore, Evelyn said. But I also don't want a life built around pretending you didn't break something that cannot be repaired. Daniel lowered his eyes. I understand. I hope you build a good life. I hope you do too. He walked away without looking back. When Evelyn turned toward the cemetery gate, Margaret stood nearby. She wore a dark coat and leaned on a cane. You move quietly, Evelyn said. I've had practice. They walked toward the road. Margaret had moved into a modest house overlooking the harbour. She created a fund for people wrongfully convicted through financial manipulation and police corruption. Vivian managed the investigations. Hale awaited sentencing. Julian entered rehabilitation before beginning his testimony. No one knew whether the Ashcroft name would survive. Evelyn had been offered positions at 3 major accounting firms. She refused all of them. Instead, she began working with Vivian. Not because she trusted her completely. She did not. But because Vivian possessed other files, other names, other people destroyed by carefully manufactured lies. At the cemetery gate, Margaret stopped. There is something you should know. Evelyn waited. The person who created the evidence against you was never found. I know. Oliver refused to identify them. He may have done it himself. Margaret shook her head. Oliver was powerful, but he did not understand digital systems well enough to alter surveillance footage or manufacture encrypted records. Then Celeste hired someone. She swore she didn't. Celeste also tried to burn me alive. She had no reason to protect that person after accepting her plea. Do you have a name? No. Then what do you have? Margaret reached into her coat. Before she could answer, a horn sounded near the road. Vivian waited beside a black SUV. Margaret withdrew her empty hand. Another time, she said. Evelyn watched her walk away. Vivian opened the passenger door. You coming? Evelyn looked at the SUV. It was almost identical to the vehicle that had collected her from prison. Where? A woman in Connecticut was convicted of poisoning her husband. She says the dead man called her yesterday. Evelyn stared at Vivian. You believe her? I believe someone wants us to think she's lying. Evelyn entered the SUV. As it pulled away, the cemetery disappeared behind the trees. Neither woman saw the man watching from a parked car across the road. He waited until they were gone. Then he approached the Carter graves. He wore black gloves. He placed an envelope against Helen's headstone. Inside was a photograph. It showed a younger Evelyn standing outside her father's repair shop. She appeared to be 8 or 9. Beside her stood a woman Evelyn would not have recognized. One hand rested on Evelyn's shoulder. The woman's face had been scratched away. On the back was a sentence. You were never supposed to survive that day. Below it was a symbol. A black circle, divided by a single silver line. The same symbol that appeared on the forged flash drive used to convict Evelyn. The man returned to his car. Before entering, he removed his glasses. He was the judge who sentenced Evelyn 3 years earlier. He called someone. She opened the first file, he said. Her voice answered. Does she know? Not yet. And Margaret? She's becoming a problem. The judge looked toward the road where Evelyn's SUV disappeared. What do you want me to do? The voice remained silent. Then it said, Open the second file. The call ended. Inside the SUV, Evelyn opened Vivian's folder about the woman in Connecticut. The first page contained a photograph of a lakeside home. The second contained an autopsy report. The third contained phone records. At the bottom of the list appeared a familiar symbol, a black circle divided by a silver line. Evelyn's breath caught. Vivian. Vivian glanced toward her. What? Where did you get this? Vivian looked at the symbol. For the first time since Evelyn had met her, Vivian Sinclair appeared truly frightened. She pulled the SUV onto the shoulder. We need to go back. To the cemetery? To your mother's grave. Why? Vivian stared at the symbol. Because the Ashcrofts weren't the people who chose you. A cold feeling spread through Evelyn. What does that mean? It means Oliver framed you because he was afraid of what you might uncover. And this symbol? Vivian looked toward the distant cemetery. It belongs to the people who told him to do it. Evelyn looked through the rear window. A dark car appeared at the top of the hill. It began moving toward them. Fast. Vivian shifted into drive. Hold on. The dark car accelerated. Evelyn gripped the door as Vivian pulled onto the highway. Who are they? Vivian looked into the mirror. The reason your mother spent her entire life hiding you. The other car struck them from behind. The SUV swerved. Beyond the guardrail, the ocean stretched far below. Vivian fought to regain control. The dark car pulled beside them. The driver's window lowered. The judge who sentenced Evelyn raised a gun. Evelyn recognized him. Their eyes met. Then everything went black. Because every betrayal creates two stories. The one the world believes, and the one someone will kill to keep buried. This was The Revenge Files. Tell us in the comments which suspect you believed was guilty, and when you realised Evelyn had been framed to conceal something far greater than $18 million. And remember, the truth may clear your name, but it can also place you directly in the path of the people who buried it.